It's 1 o'clock. I'm going to call to order the work session for the mayor and council for September the 12th. And I'm going to start by opening up tab A, governing body. Item 1 is consider the adoption of a resolution authorizing the execution of documents related to the issuance of the Urban Redevelopment Agency revenue bond, including intergovernmental contract with the agency. We have a guest here today, Tommy Ratchford with Murray Barnes Finister LLP. Tommy, good to see you again.
Good afternoon. Good to see you all again, too. This is the third time I've been before you all in just a little bit.
Yes, sir.
So I won't wear you out with the entire background, but essentially...
Is your mic on?
Can you hear me better? Green? I'm not seeing it. Push. Is that better?
There you go.
Awesome. So what I'm here before you today, in your last meeting on the 18th, the Urban Redevelopment Agency adopted a bond resolution, which provided for the issuance of the bonds. And what you're here today to consider is the city resolution agreeing or authorizing the mayor to enter into the intergovernmental contract, which secures the bond payments. And so that's essentially what the resolution does, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on that. Worth pointing out, the bonds are expected to be paid from revenues generated within the TAD, so there's no expectation that you'll ever have to come out of pocket on that. It'll be paid with TAD revenues. And looking at those numbers, it's about double what your bond payment's going to be. So hopefully those come in where you expect them to be. And that's really, it's short and sweet. And it also authorizes the mayor and the clerk to sign all the associated closing documents.
Okay, very good. This item, I'm going to ask for it to be on the consent agenda. So first, let me see if there are any questions from council, because if we put it on the consent agenda, I will not ask Tommy to come back tonight. Council, do you have any questions for Tommy? Okay. All right. Thank you, Tommy.
I appreciate it,
I'll see if we can put it on the consent agenda. Is there any objection to me making this consent number 1? All right. Hearing no objection, that item will become consent number 1. And Tommy, you're excused. You will not need to return tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it.
All right. Let's move on to community development, tab B. The next 3 items all have a public hearing. So we will carry all 3 of these, actually all 4 of these items under community development into the regular meeting tonight, but I'm going to ask Ron to just briefly introduce each of these items, and if there are questions, we'll take some staff level questions here. If they're not, just keep in mind these items will all go into the regular session tonight. So B1, RA-06-18, extension of Avamore rezoning at 55 and 63 Goldworth Road. Ron.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is an item for Avamore's rezoning extension, zoning extension and renewal for another 12 months. We went through our previous conditions. We were able to mark on here which ones have been completed, which ones have not been completed, so the council is aware of what is outstanding. The updated traffic analysis, the applicant has requested to have that updated once actual buildings or units are starting to be constructed on site. The updated review letter from Three Rivers Regional Commission, he is also preparing another DRI application to them as well, just with some of those updated numbers. So the staff hasn't actually provided a recommendation for this application, but we have provided potential actions that the council can take in addition to some additional conditions that we would like to see possibly placed on the project.
Okay, and let me just clarify, does this item require a public hearing? As this is an extension of a rezoning, not a rezoning.
Yeah.
I don't have David here. I had asked this question before.
In the past, we have done public hearings for the item, so I prepared the cover sheet in the same way that we have in the past.
That's different from whether it's required. I want to come back to that. Council, do you have any questions for Ron on this item?
I have some questions.
All right, Mr. Montahan.
So the recommended stipulations or conditions here, not all of them, just for example, on the previous conditions, 7A required the zoning book to be submitted for approval with the final development plan. But I don't see the zoning book as a required condition here in the proposed conditions for the potential action. So does that then mean that he does not have to comply with the zoning book?
He's already submitted the zoning book to us, so he would still be required to, as per that item 7 in the potential actions. So he would still need to actually abide by the zoning that we passed.
Okay. Is that where the applicant developer must follow all zoning tabulations, design-based representations presented in the Avamore master plan?
Yes, sir.
Is that where, okay.
Mhm.
That
Okay.
makes sense to me.
Okay, but but similarly, we're removing, it looks like we're removing the senior housing unit requirement of 290, because that's not repeated in the subsequent, the new potential conditions. At least that's the way I read this. Because I see where we discuss the maximum number of single-family units and a maximum number of multifamily units, but I don't see any reference to the 55 plus.
And everything that the council has passed to date, and that would have been including the 290 units, that's still something that would be that's still his maximum number of units that he can build. We can go back to include an additional item. I don't know if there's any objection to that, but we can include an additional condition there for the 290.
Well, I mean, if it were me, and I'm just speaking for myself as one council person here, but if it's the staff's intent or the city's intent, I should say, that these pre-existing conditions were still going to apply to this, then I would like to have kind of maybe you would call it a catch-all condition that states that unless that condition is expressly overridden here in these new conditions, that all previous conditions still apply.
I could do
That would be, I mean, that would just be my take on it.
Yeah, I
But-
think it feels to me like that's what you are intending to do with this document, but I don't believe it's exactly clear. So I think that, Tom, do you want to weigh in on that? And just for a second, is your mic on, or you might want to pull it over?
Oh, sorry.
All right,
Is
go
that
ahead.
better?
So what I had instructed Ron to do was to quit moving forward the items that were complete. But several of these conditions, in my view, aren't conditions. They're more like limitations, like the number of units. To me, that's not what I would call a condition. So
I mean,
what we're doing is going back to the zoning book on the housing units, and there is a senior component to that original book that still applies.
So you
So-
think that it is almost redundant?
I'm
but is there
okay.
any
I'm
harm?
okay with what y'all are talking
is there
about
any
doing.
harm
Though it
to
doesn't
do?
hurt anything.
Okay.
I just have two concerns. The first concern is that because this is a PUD, so it limits it. We are essentially, it's not your typical zoning. We are designing it, if you will, in kind of discussions with the developer. So I think the more information we have that expresses our intent, the better, or that clarifies our intent, the better. The second, typically in a rezoning, if you have a condition that you don't like, someone, there's a condition to, I don't know, put a trampoline in the middle of every yard, and the developer comes to a subsequent owner comes in and they want to remove that, they have to go through rezoning again to remove it. And so I feel like this could be interpreted, perhaps this renewal could be interpreted as a rezoning in some sense. I know it's not, because we really don't need a public hearing, but just from my experience, I just think I would much rather have something in there that just kind of
Yeah, I'm good with that.
explicitly incorporates it over.
Other council members, do you have any issues with making that modification? Basically a catch-all that the councilman's talking about? All right, so why don't
Okay,
you make
I'll work on
that
that.
as part of what you present tonight, okay?
Sounds good. Mhm.
And then I had one other thing I was going to throw out there, but, well, I want to come back to this after David gets here about whether or not there's a public hearing required. I don't mind doing a public hearing, but the point of having it on this document, on this agenda, tells me what is required by law. And if you just, if we just wanted to do a public hearing, I have no problem with doing that, of course, but there probably was no noticing provisions put out there for the public there was nothing placed on the property, it's not a
No,
rezoning.
no.
So it
Yeah.
troubles me that it might suggest that one is required by having it on the agenda. But we'll take that up separately. I just want to make sure with David about whether or not it's required. Let's go ahead and move on. Let's go to B2, VA-07-23, variance from sections 9.291 and 9.291E of the Villa Rica sign ordinance for Fuqua out parcels. This item does require a public hearing. Ron, go ahead and present it.
Sure. So this is Fuqua's out parcels. There's a total of six lots total that they are looking to have two variances on for signs. So the current ordinance requires or allows for one sign on each frontage, and they are looking to have two signs, one on each side, on the front and on the back of the buildings. One's not facing frontage, but facing parking aisles and parking spaces and drive-throughs and all of that, which we don't permit. So that rear sign for each of these out parcels, they're looking to have them the same size as the front sign, which we don't permit also. So the staff is recommending denial on the change in the size to make them the same size as the front. But we are recommending approval for that additional sign for the rear, so people can actually know which out parcel they're going to.
Okay. And if I understand this correctly, these are, they want these variances as options. They haven't decided whether or not they would do this on each of those parcels.
Correct.
For certain, but they want that to be options.
That's right.
As they seek to fill in these out parcels.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any questions for Ron? This item does have a public hearing, so. Okay, let's move on to B3, VA-08-23, variance from section 7.0226 and 8.094A of the Villa Rica zoning ordinance for 380 Mirror Lake Boulevard. This item requires a public hearing. Go ahead, Ron.
All right, so this is GX Development LLC. They are trying to construct a 4,200 square foot Circle K store. They're applied for variances to reduce the amount of parking spaces from 39 required spaces to 30 spaces, and also to have a drive-through window in the front of the building that will be facing what we're calling internally the Mirror Lake Connector roadway. And so we recommended denial for both variances.
Okay, let me correct you on what we're calling that. That is Villa Rica Parkway.
Yes, I heard, this is my first time hearing that. Yes, around this week, I believe. Was
So
the first
that
time I
needs
heard
to
it.
be, that needs to be how we reference that going forward, Villa Rica Parkway. Okay, council, do you have any questions for Ron on this item? All right, let's move on to B4. This is a comprehensive plan, second public hearing. So I have a question, Ron. Where is this document? Is this available for the public to view? I know it's in draft form, but is it available for the public to view?
It is. It's a working draft. We have a copy in the community development offices.
Okay. Would there be any reason or any objection to putting this online? Here's my problem. We're
Typically-
doing a public hearing, and the public has not even had an opportunity to independently review the document.
It is a working draft, so I'm concerned with putting working drafts on the city's website.
Could we watermark it?
Yeah, we can watermark it.
I just think I feel like the public needs to at least be able to view the document if they're going to be allowed an opportunity to come up and speak on it. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, what are they speaking on?
It is on Civic Clerk, and it is available to the public now.
So it is. Well, I just asked you that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, everything
Not
is
the-
on Civic Clerk that we have to
Not
bring
the
forward,
website, I don't think.
but not on the website.
Not like we would traditionally put it on the website.
Can we do that?
We can.
All right, I'd like to do that. All right, Do you want to present anything here? Because if I'm going to do a public hearing, I do it tonight, and I'm good with just waiting.
No, we can just wait.
All right,
Thanks.
let's do that. I
Mhm.
appreciate it. All right. So that's you. That's all of you.
That's it
All right.
for now. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. No, we are. Number 4, we're going to do tonight, not right now. We're going to take it to tonight. Okay, C1. We're going to do tab C, which is Public Works. C1 is the surplus of 2 vehicles. Who is presenting that? And since I don't know your name, come up here and give us your name.
Good afternoon.
No. Is the green light on?
There we go.
There you go.
So, for those of I haven't met, I've been here a couple of months. I'm the fleet manager for the city, Chris Maddox. So we have 2 units. One is for the police department. One is for wastewater. The police department has I believe it's a 2013 Ford Taurus. It's worth about maybe $4,000 to $5,000. The local Ford dealer is giving us about $2,600 in repairs it's going to cost. They've already taken this out of being used on a daily basis. I think it was used to going back and forth to the academy. So they want to go ahead and put it up on Gov Deals for auction. And then the other is was a former wastewater, I think it was a crane truck. We just got a new one in for it, and it's been swapped over. So it's no longer used. It's a diesel. We're kind of moving out of using the diesels because of the maintenance, and it's an older unit. So they want to put it up on Gov Deals as well. Both of the units are at the Avanti building. We're running out of room in there. So we would like to put it on Gov Deals. It looks like we've been using that since 2009 and had pretty good success with it. So we would just like to auction the vehicles off, and then I guess each department would get that money back and use it how they want to use it.
Sure. Do you know the model years of those 2 vehicles?
So the F550 is a 2003, I believe, and the Ford Taurus is a 2013, I think.
Okay, so one of them's 20 years old. One of
Yeah,
them's 10
and the
years
Taurus has over 100,000, and the F550 is right at about 90, I think. So, just the maintenance on that diesel, we just don't have a need for it.
Okay.
We're phasing them out.
All right, council, do you have any questions? All right, is there any objection to making C1 consent number 2? All right, let's go ahead and go to C2, presentation from Roadway Management Technologies. Thank you, Chris.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hey, how are y'all doing today?
Very good. Give us your name.
Yeah, my name is Noah Butler from Roadway Management Technologies.
Okay.
Oh, perfect.
All right, go ahead.
How do we make that full screen? Sorry, just want to make sure y'all can see it first.
Not a problem. We can see it in front of us, too, once it comes up.
So I'll give you a little bit of context before we look at the PowerPoint today. So what Roadway Management Technologies does is help transition a city's current fleet of vehicles into a smart fleet for the purposes of collecting road quality data. And the idea is to basically help monitor pavement deterioration modeling, and so we can help transition from a worst first approach to a preservation-based effort and hopefully maximize budget efficiencies with the agencies we serve. So kind of how that works is we use 3 different data outputs or inputs, if you will. And so we monitor basically road deterioration metrics through vibrations caused within the pavement itself at 52,000 points per second with accelerometers. And we also measure the pitch, roll, and yaw, or the attitude of the vehicle, to understand if there's base or sub-bases over a period of time, changes in the base or sub-base over a period of time. And then we use images as the third component. And so we use all 3 of these data points to go through and rate our roads. And so as we can see on the map here, it's a gradient scale, green being the better roads in the network, red being the roads of kind of improvement or needs of improvement within the agency. So we're looking at Cabot, Arkansas for today's example. And so we could see up here in the top left-hand corner that they currently manage about a 79 PCI score, which is pavement condition indexing. They have about 7,500 mile years remaining in useful surface life, and they manage about a $24 million asset today. We're actually breaking that back through an A through F scale for reporting purposes, so we can understand where are good roads, where are bad roads, and where are even worse roads, and then the maintenance efforts that the agencies that we service are running. And so that's where we can see the potential network gain for this agency. So if they were to go through and execute every single one of these projects, they could increase their score to a 90, so bring it up to an A quality, add 1,200 mile years back into the remaining surface life, and that'll bring up their asset to about a $30 million asset for that agency. Does that kind of make sense so far, or any questions?
Well, I think generally I'm following what you're saying, but how are we doing this? Where do we, is there a module placed on vehicles, and which vehicles is it placed on?
So yeah, whenever we engage in a relationship, we do a fleet optimization analysis. So all the hardware that we provide for the agency is completely for free. And so we determine how many vehicles we would like to equip to get full and frequent coverage of your city. And then the system is entirely passive. So the driver of the vehicle doesn't have to do anything. They just hop in their vehicle, turn on the vehicle, and drive their normal day-to-day. And whenever they park, it uploads through Wi-Fi and comes into our pavement management system that we can see here.
What vehicles would you typically use in the fleet? The patrol cars or the sanitation
Whatever-
trucks?
We work with agencies, so it's whatever we have access to. So anything from public works vehicles, code enforcement, PD, utility, waste management. So whatever gives us the most unique coverage for the city.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah,
Mr. Carter?
basically, how do you price this thing out? Do you price it per vehicle? I mean,
Phenomenal.
obviously, you want some return for your effort.
Absolutely. So we're more than happy to share it. We charge per lane mile of the agency we're servicing, so that way it's scalable for the size of network. So that's how we price it out, and it's different for every agency depending on just a lot of different kind of variables we look at. But I believe y'all came roughly to around $150 per lane mile. Don't quote me.
$150 per lane mile that we use, or based on the number of lane miles we have in the city?
How many y'all have in the city?
Okay, so
Correct.
you could have worked up some numbers on that, but I don't see them here. Are we looking at any numbers, Hal? Do we have some
We
stuff?
have it.
It's in the budget, so there was a quote that was.
Right,
provided.
this is the presentation. It's already in the budget, so
We don't have any numbers to go with.
we don't have any here, but they were in the budget.
Is this going to be on tonight?
Like
We're going to
12,000.
actually, this is just a presentation so
Right.
that we would be familiar with what we're doing.
Okay.
So, does anybody have any questions for him regarding this? Because it was already in the budget to pay for it.
That was based off 136 lane miles.
136 lane miles. Is that what we have in the city, Hal?
Couldn't tell you.
You don't know? Okay, I don't really know how we count that. Okay. All right, if there are no other questions, then thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, let's move on to tab D, which is finance. This is the big one, Ms. Jennifer Hallman. So we will, do I typically do this on consent, or do I take this over to the regular meeting?
I think it's required to be on the regular meeting.
Okay.
I think you can do it on consent.
So we cannot do it on, and we shouldn't. Anyway, I don't want to do it. So here's what I'll do. We've already been through a number of hearings, and so I don't really see a need to go through that again. But if the council has any questions, let's take those up right now. Anybody have any questions on the 2024 operating and capital budget, which will be presented tonight for adoption? All right, hearing none.
For the record, can I
Yes,
just
ma'am.
put something? John Bain, the utilities director, had a request, and it's just swapping some projects out. There's no impact dollar-wise to the budget, but just for the record, since it wasn't in my previous presentation, we had placed $130,000 for the replacement of an ATAD pump at the West Plant. And their most recent quotes came in much less, around $70,000.
Okay.
So they want to use some of those funds, around $35,000, to replace baffle boards at the water treatment plant. Not quite sure what that is. John's here if he wants to go in a little bit more detail. But I just wanted that on the record so
Okay.
that if you saw that when we approve or print out the budget books, you'll see.
Well, I
that being
appreciate that,
mentioned.
and I think that kind of exchange is not something that would raise any questions. If on the other hand, he found $35,000 and he wanted to hire somebody, that might be a problem.
Correct.
Okay, so council, do you have any questions for Jennifer? All right, if there are none, we'll take this up tonight. Let's go to D2, fiscal year 23 budget amendments.
Okay. The first one on the list is the 2022 Douglas Splost. As you know, we started collecting the new Splost on the Douglas side, and we are, this is just a housekeeping, adopting the project length budget. We're expecting to get a little over $8 million for the Douglas Splost, and around $3 million is for street improvements, $4 million for various infrastructure, and a little over $1 million for public safety. You might want to go maybe scroll it. That's okay. So that's the first budget amendments, 156 through 159. 160 through 164 is the new Christmas decor for downtown. In the August council meeting, y'all approved the purchase of some Christmas decor with holiday designs totaling $69,371. So this includes that, as well as an additional $13,250 is needed for the installation. The next one is the third annual Power Wheel Challenge. This is money in, money out kind of thing. Parks and Recreation has received $1,800 in sponsorships for this event. So we want to amend the budget by increasing the revenue for sponsorships and then increasing their program revenue so that they can run the event. And last but not least is the recreation program and events. As we've seen throughout the year, due to additional programs and the success of those programs, we have generated more revenue in those for those events, and therefore there's also some additional expenditures that come along with holding those events. So there's $15,000 of increasing in revenue, and then giving them the $15,000 in their budget as well.
Right, which is budget neutral.
Yes.
So could these be described as budget amendments 156 through 168?
Correct.
Okay. All right, council, do you have any questions for Jennifer? Okay, is there any objection to making this consent number 3? All right, thank you, Jennifer. Let's go to tab E, Deputy City Manager. E1, Villa Rica social media policy. Will Ken be doing this? Hello, Ken.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor
All right.
and members of council. You may recall that in your 2022 retreat, there was a brief discussion about social media policy, during which Mr. Mecklin first opened my eyes that there were different rules for cities with Facebook accounts and someone's private personal account. A private Facebook user, for example, can delete or block someone who makes a comment the user doesn't like. A public entity, such as a city, can't do that. In February, I attended a state government communicators event in Athens and heard a presentation by the director of the First Amendment Clinic at the UGA Law School. She outlined the current consensus of case law governing social media postings for local governments. In the process, it became clearer to me that the social media policy we already have is inadequate. The city currently uses a guideline on its Facebook page that closely mirrors Facebook's corporate terms of use policy. I drafted a new social media policy using the information from that conference and the policy other cities have made. This draft was extensively reviewed and revised by the First Amendment Clinic. I then asked Mr. Mecklin to review all that they had done, and the result is the proposed policy attached to this agenda item. While this policy is for those who post comments on our social media pages, it is also for city staff who maintain and monitor those pages. It gives us clear instruction on how we can police our platforms so that they allow our citizens to express their constitutional right to criticize, praise, or otherwise comment on city administration policy, but without giving offense to other users. This policy allows city staff to remove comments that are obscene, as defined by the FCC. That's a difference from profanity. Obscenity is not constitutionally protected. Profanity is. We can also delete a comment that has links to fraudulent, pornographic, or copyright infringing external websites. one that incites illegal activity, threatens any individual with physical harm, or disparages any race or ethnicity, and contains information that could violate the privacy and safety of others, including identifying information such as email addresses, not publicly known physical addresses, or places of employment or medical information. I should note, though, that Facebook and perhaps other platforms automatically delete some profanity or other content, but that's part of the platform's terms of service to which all users, including the city and its followers, are subject. We have also specified some actions that we might take if we do delete someone, or some comment, I should say. But in no case will a person not be able to view, like, or share our post. So a person who violates the standard more than 3 times will be temporarily restricted. Those who violate a policy more than 6 times will be permanently restricted, but again, they will still be able to view, like, or share city post. This policy is not intended to restrict anyone's right to comment on the city's policies, whether to praise, criticize, or even ridicule them. It is to ensure that we as city staff have a clear policy on how every commenter is going to be used or going to be treated equally and fairly.
Okay, and I heard you say it, but I want to clarify again. Mr. Mecklin, you have reviewed this proposed policy probably extensively, because I think this has been circulating for a while, for several months.
Correct.
This is not new.
No.
This is not recent.
No.
This has been going on ever since last year when it came up in a retreat, and it's been sort of in-house moving around until we come now to this actual proposed policy. Correct?
Yes, both in-house and out-house. I mean, this is a topic that's a hot topic all throughout. City attorneys, city public relations people, everybody's talking about it.
Yeah. So I want to, and I'm going to recognize council for any questions, but I'm going to just talk for a minute about this. As this moved around over the last year, there was discussion about whether or not the city would even consider not allowing any commenting on its Facebook page, because that is permitted. The difference is if you allow commenting, then you have to monitor it, and you have certain requirements for that, and you cannot remove items just because you don't like them. There was never any belief that the city would take that route, but I think it's important for folks to know that would have been an option. But because we are not interested in restricting all comments, it became important that we have some policy and that we have a number of staff members who are entrusted with the ability to monitor that activity there. So I wanted to just be clear with the public about how this evolved and why we are here today with this proposed policy. Council, do you have any questions for Ken or for David or for Tom before we move forward? Mr. Carter.
Okay. Can you mention 5 of the social media outlets here? And then down below you say the city monitors all social media. There's a lot more than 5.
There are, but we subscribe specifically to those 5.
So these are the only 5 we're monitoring, or we actually?
We have registered with other social media, but we are not active on those. We are just basically.
I know they're
them.
popping up left and right, and there's a lot of them out
We're
there.
just basically holding on to them so that no one else gets them.
Okay.
So we're only in the business of monitoring and having a policy for those that we subscribe to.
That is correct.
Yep, and that makes sense to me. Anybody else? Mr. Montahan.
I did have one kind of, I think the second provision there said, any comment that's off topic to the city's post, and I'm just a little concerned about that could be a slippery slope when we talk about off topic. So how do I don't know if we should even include that, but I mean, in your training, or, how do they address that? What was the feedback you received?
Well, I don't have a specific answer for that. It did pass muster with the outside counsel that I
Okay.
talked with. But essentially, you know, we're trying to maintain that, you know, the commentary is focused on what we post.
Right.
Other people could, for example, say, how about coming and visiting our new open house next week at our new store that we're opening?
Sure. I mean-
They could post that directly under an announcement about being closed for Labor Day weekend, for example.
Right.
So-
Yeah, I mean, I think something like that's pretty clean, cut, and dry. You know, I'm concerned about, you know, I envision a debate about paving a road that then gets, because the topic's about paving a road, and then all of a sudden it diverges into something about
No, that would be.
how do you pay for the road? Well, that's taxes, and da-da-da, and then now you're talking about property taxes.
In my opinion,
That may be off
Councilmember,
topic.
that would be part of the topic. If we're talking about, we're
Okay.
going to be coming to pave your road next week, then they can talk about how we have paved or have not paved roads in the past.
Fair enough. Okay.
So it seemed to me that, as I heard some of this being talked about, we knew that we would be very, very reluctant to remove any comments, that they would need to be clear violations. And I don't know that this was laid out, but I mean, I envisioned that the city attorney would that before anything was removed, that the city attorney would be contacted.
If there was a question, yes.
If it
we-
wasn't just that clear.
Right, if it was not a clear-cut case,
Okay.
we would try to get.
Right, because I'm just really
advice
not
before we did
interested
that.
in removing comments. I mean, as I've made real clear, and I think David has made real clear, we need to be very cautious about ever doing that. But I think what Councilman Montahan's talking about is kind of a slippery slope. But I think that if it's clear that it's off topic, then maybe that could happen. But I just need to make sure that everybody pushes that toward the city attorney if there's just any possibility that it feels like it might be a stretch.
I agree, Mr. Mayor. I've been professionally defending the First Amendment for over 40 years. and,
I understand.
and
This is not to question you. This is to
I am not
be.
interested in quelching any
I get
public
that.
comment whatsoever.
I
but
just
we
want
do
to-
want not to offend other people.
I understand. And I don't do this. I'm not going to be part of that. But I just want to be clear that there needs to be a sort of a cautious effort when monitoring this page. Mr. Carter.
Yeah, Ken, how are we monitoring these social media sites?
Well, practically, we just look at them when we can. It does not mean that we're monitoring them 24/7.
We don't
We don't have
algorithms?
anyone. We don't have anyone who's professionally dedicated to looking at every single social media post that comes across.
There's a catch can thing.
Essentially, for all practical purposes, yes.
We've looked at a service that does that, but we've never brought it to council. There is such a thing.
I'm hoping we don't get there, but I think, Mr. Carter, the way this works is there's probably, and I don't know the number, but 3 or 4 or 5 people who have access to be able to post on the city's social media. And I think that those folks get notifications when something is,
That is
a comment
correct.
is made. I'm
Right.
not good at this at all. That's why I don't
Right.
do Facebook. But there's, I think if you make a comment on a post, some other people in the city get notified that something just got posted.
That's correct. I get alert on my phone, but if it's 2:00 in the morning and I'm sound asleep, I don't see it until I wake up. So
Fair enough. But that's when it gets looked at. It's not like somebody is sitting at a desk all day just running through our 5
That's
or
correct.
6 platforms,
That's
right?
correct,
It
yes.
just it's sort of
And we don't have any kind of algorithm, other than it catches certain words and gives you a notice?
if it's deleted by Facebook itself, it's because it's triggered something within their algorithm. They have a profanity filter, for example. As I just mentioned, profanity is protected speech, but that's Facebook's decision to delete that. That's not our decision.
Right, and it sends you a message saying,
We do get a notice that some pages have been, but we have to actually kind of look for that. It gives us a report, in other words, that they have blocked
okay.
some posts.
if we're not the deleter, or we're not the ones who took the action, but Facebook did,
That's not
for
our
example,
problem.
then we have no,
Have no liability.
No issues there. Okay. All right. Is there any objection to making this consent number 4? All right. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Council.
All right. Let's go to tab F, City Manager. F1, Design of Punkintown Road Rebuild. Mr. Barber.
The council approved a proposal from Lowe Engineers to redesign the intersection of Punkintown and the new road coming off of Shoreline at the red light. We have subsequently approved a contract with Bartow to actually make those changes, and now it's time for us to start working on the Punkintown Road from the intersection improvements north to the other side of Old Stone and the entrance to Town Creek neighborhood. We're bringing a proposal from Falcon to do that design, and once that's done, we'll come back again with another bid and contract for the actual construction. In between those two things, we'll have an easement acquisition endeavor that will take place. So we're still, chronologically a good ways away from a new Punkintown Road, but this is the next step.
All right. Any questions for Tom on this? Mr.
Yeah.
Carter.
So this goes from the intersection of the Villa Rica Parkway red light all the way over to the connection to the north bypass? No.
No, just north of Old Stone and Town Creek neighborhood. And then the developer will build that last leg.
Hey, there's going to be are we going to take this to the roundabout that the developer's building? Or we put a leg out and he connects to it, or what?
Maybe, but we're gonna build it down far enough so that the developer can get to it.
Take it and go from there, okay.
But we're not planning to improve the leg in front of the cemetery.
That is going to remain Punkintown.
Right, and it's not gonna be the high traffic portion, so we're not planning to spend the money on it. At
Okay.
least not now.
All right.
We'll know better after we work on it.
That should be low traffic at that point. Okay, anybody else? Is there any objection to making this consent number 5? Let's go to F2, Survey for Shoreline Lift Station Force Main.
All right, this one's a little more complicated. So the Shoreline Lift Station currently pumps from the very west end of the lake up to a point where the flow will gravity all the way to the north plant. And two things are going on. One is the north plant is at about 80% of capacity, and we don't have a way to cost effectively increase the capacity of the plant. So the solution, because we have growth at Mirror Lake, is to divert part of the flow to the west plant where we do have treatment capacity. So what got us started on this was the need to divert flow from the north plant to the west plant. And the way we were going to do that was to reroute the force main from the Shoreline Lift Station and have it go west through the Parkway Circle neighborhood over to the Cleghorn Station instead of going effectively south and east to go to the north plant. Then when we got into the actual design of it, we realized that not only did the force main need to be redone, but the entire lift station did, because it was not big enough for what was going to be required to handle. So we need to rebuild a new lift station across the street. So this is going to be just west of the bridge on Shoreline, if you can picture that. Just before the golf course crosses Shoreline. We're going to be building a new station across the street and running a new force main all the way to Cleghorn. So this proposal is to do that survey work so that, again, we can get into another easement acquisition process before we do the installation.
All right. Any questions for Tom on this? Cost of this is $30,300, and it is a budgeted item. So, is there any objection to making it consent number 6? All right, let's go to F3, improvements to the road surface on Mirror Lake Dam.
All right, City Council has recently approved a repair to the dam where there was a leakage problem. That work has been done. It was overseen by the Safe Dams people, and Bobby ran the project for us. Now we are entertaining an issue that we have on the top of the dam where rainwater is not draining and it's actually pooling along one half of the road, so one entire lane of the road, and what it's doing is it's giving drivers a reason to get into the oncoming traffic to get around this pool of water instead of driving through it. We have designed the fix, and again, Bobby is going to be overseeing this along with the Safe Dams folks. $12,125 for the fix.
All right, any questions for Tom on this?
Just one.
All right, Mr.
What
Carter.
is the fix?
Just the drainage, just improve
create
the
some
drainage.
Create some drainage spots to get rid of the water.
It's just that it's on top of the dam, and the moral of this story is you don't build a road on top of a dam, but we did, so now we got to deal with it. It just makes everything, there's more scrutiny to anything we do now because of it being on the dam.
Right. Anybody else? All right, is there any objection to making that consent number 7? Okay, so we're down to F4, which is a presentation on the zoning ordinance changes to chapters 1 through 3, 6 through 7, and 13. This is only for information purposes, so it'll be brief. I'm going to ask Ron to come up, and then I'll see if there are any questions. So, Ron, just briefly introduce this.
Sure. This is a presentation for zoning ordinance changes that we've been working on for quite some time. This is chapters 1 through 3, 6, 7, and 13. These chapters have an assortment of different changes that we're looking to have conducted within this zoning ordinance, our existing ordinance. So that would be revisions to PUDs, change of uses, revisions to our hearing procedures as required by state law that's been updated. There's a number of different changes, and so there's no action that's actually required or necessary for tonight. We just wanted to deliver the presentation to you all to be able to go through, and if we need to do a presentation on this, I'm prepared to do so tonight.
Okay, Mr. Carter, did you have a question on this one?
I did, and I'm looking at page 11. I know the latest draft from Mr. Mecklin, which I worked with him on, had wards 1 and 2 ending in an even year, which is 2022, had wards 3, 4, and 5 in an odd year, which is 2023, but this doesn't reflect that. It doesn't reflect its latest change. Why is that? I know.
I'll take a look at the document that I've received from the city attorney, but I recall I did copy and paste it. I didn't make up the dates or anything, but I'll go back and I'll take another look.
Well, the idea was to have the 1 and 2 run at the same time for election, 3, 4, and 5 at the same time for election, was kind of make those two jive with each other. So 1 and 2 would be an even year, they would stay together. 3, 4, and 5 would be an odd year, and they'd stay together. So we would know when we're making our changes, because these are 2-year terms from here on out.
All right, I'll take another look at it between the break.
So, Mr. Carter, so are you looking at, so look at this, Ron, and then Mr. Carter only has 2 changes, right?
Yeah.
Did you already print them out?
Yeah, he had
Give that to Ron,
I will.
and then this is what he believes that he has asked for.
Actually, the only changes we were doing was changing that to a 2 and changing that to a 3. So all this other stuff was superfluous.
So, Ron, what I'd like you to do is take a look at what
1
Mr.
and 2
Carter.
are an even year, and 3, 4, and 5 are an odd year. That's sequenced them with the way that we run for re-election on the council.
is telling you, and then I want you to take that to Mr. Mecklin and make sure that that jives with what he was doing on this, and then y'all get that on the same page before we adopt this change. All right, is there anything else? All right, Mr. Momtahan.
Just looking at section, chapter 6, which is on the PUDs, particularly in section 6.06, subsection 5, technical advisory committee review and approval. Ron, I think that section needs some more attention because it wavers between using the planning and zoning, holding a public hearing, whereas I think in the previous section that was removed for the prelim plat, but I understand it will still be needed for the zoning portion of it. So I think you just need to take a look at that, because then it also talks about the technical advisory committee also reviewing it as well. My understanding was that, from what I believe is the intent here, was that once it is zoned, the technical advisory committee would be reviewing the prelim plat, not P and Z. If that's my understanding, maybe I'm wrong, but I know there's areas in this chapter 6 where we stricken planning and zoning commission in favor of using technical advisory committee. But here in this section 5, it brings planning and zoning commission back into it. So I was just bringing your attention to that. And the only other comment I had so far was when it comes to submitting the prelim plats or development plans, I would like a requirement that the plans should include, and I didn't see it anywhere for PUDs or for other prelim plat submissions, but for the non-PUDs, just a requirement that the zoning conditions or stipulations be stated on the cover of the plan. So it makes, I think, staff's life a little easier to not have to go and dig out minutes to confirm what conditions, since I think we are probably doing a lot more conditions than we may have done on zonings in the past.
Yeah, we do have preliminary plat requirements for what would actually need to be put on the front page. I'll go and review those again and see what exactly, and if I can include that in there. It might be
Okay.
already addressed. I don't know.
Yeah, because
So-
I was looking here on chapter 6, and this thing is just constant. I'm trying to find stuff, and it just loads and locks up on me. So, sorry. Where did it go? I just had it, and I can't find it. Yeah, I don't. And it may be on a checklist in the UDC, but I guess what I was looking at right here on as far as this would be the on going back to chapter 6, the application for prelim plat shall be filed with Secretary of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So again, I don't know if that is appropriate or not.
I'm sorry, what section is that?
We're on, it's section 6.06 under subsection 2.
Okay,
Says
2.
application. Yeah, right there. So again, there's another reference to the Secretary of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I didn't know if that was intended or not.
I'll go back through this one, 6.06, and just take another look and see
Okay.
what might need to be arranged.
Yeah,
If
then-
anything, I don't know if anything would necessarily need to be changed.
Sure. Yeah, I just
I'll
wanted to
take a
bring
look.
it to your attention. And then if you go down to 2G, where it talks about the prelim plat and what the requirements of the prelim plat were. I know obviously you guys, there's also checklists and stuff for the UDC, and the UDC comes in a little bit on that. But, maybe a requirement that the zoning conditions be included on those plat submissions, so,
We could do that. I'll make that change.
okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All right, that's for information only, so, thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to review the agenda for the consent agenda, and then we'll do public comments. So Item number one, consent number one, would be consider the adoption of a resolution authorizing the execution of documents related to the issuance of the Urban Redevelopment Agency revenue bond, including intergovernmental contract with the agency. Consent number two, surplus 2 vehicles. Consent number three, fiscal year 23 budget amendments, numbers 156 through 168. Consent number four, Billerica social media policy. Consent number five, design of Punkintown Road rebuild. Consent number six, survey for shoreline lift station force main. Consent number seven, improvements to road surface on Mirror Lake Dam. There'll be 3 public hearings tonight. There'll be 4 public hearings tonight. Item B1, which is RA-06-18, extension of Avamore rezoning at 55 and 63 Goldworth Road. Item B2, VA-07-23, variance from sections 9.291 and 9.291E of the Billerica sign ordinance for Fuqua outparcels. B3, VA-08-23, variance from sections 7.0226 and 8.094A of the Billerica zoning ordinance for 380 Mirror Lake Boulevard. And B4, comprehensive plan, the second public hearing. Does anybody hear anything different?
On that last one before, I thought a while ago we discussed the fact that the public hasn't had access to, one item they didn't have access to.
That is true, but I believe we still need to do this public hearing tonight. Is that correct? So I still have to do it, but if you could get it out as early as possible today on the draft version available on the website. I know it's available on Civic Clerk for the public, but if we could put it out on the website as well, I'd like for them to be able to see it before we have a public hearing on that tonight. Okay? All right. Now, I'll take this up later. I want to, Mr. Macklin, in our next update, let's talk about B1, not it specifically, but the idea of having a public hearing on an extension for rezoning and as to whether or not that is required. We're going to do it tonight because we already have it on this agenda, but I don't believe it's required, and I'd like us to.
I would concur with that assessment. I don't think it is.
Okay, but we're going to do it because we put it on here. So, all right, and so we might not need to talk about it, but we just know going forward. Okay, now I'm going to do public comments. Did anybody sign in for public comments? All right. Is there anybody here who would like to offer public comments? If anybody would like to do it, I'll give you 3 minutes. All right, hearing none, I'll close the public comments. And we have reached the end of the work session, which is not bad, 57 minutes. Mr. Macklin, you have anything?
No.
Mr. Barber? All right.